Welcome to the Williams factory, and can I start by saying how excited we are that your company is considering sponsoring the Williams F1 team this year.
Well, we're delighted to be here, and can I say, what a professional operation this appears to be.
Oh, well, I think you'll find we're extremely professional at Williams these days.
What was that?
Nothing at all. Just the autoclave.
The autoclave?
Yeah, we use that a lot. Very professionally, of course. There it goes again. Flipping autoclave.
Right. What's this impressive-looking machine?
Now this is the autoclave.
This is the autoclave? But the noise is coming from over there.
We have two autoclaves.
No, the noise seems to be coming from that closet.
No, it's just the autoclave, the other autoclave.
Now look here, my company is thinking of spending a lot of money on the Williams F1 team, and this all seems very fishy.
Fishy? No, not at all. Totally professional, nothing to worry about.
No, look, I'm sorry, that noise is plainly coming from that closet.
It's not. It's the autoclave, the extremely professional and sponsor-friendly Williams team autoclave.
I'm not buying this. It's coming from this closet. What the hell is in here? Bloody hell! Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm Gareth. He's Zog.
Hello.
And he's Richard Porter.
Hello.
Richard, welcome back.
I've just been in that cupboard over there all along.
Oh, I thought there was a smell.
You lost the key or something.
Yeah. I tried to keep him
toast under the gap at the bottom. It's been fine.
Welcome back. What are you doing on this programme? Why are you here? Tell us.
Well, I found myself in that there London because I'd moved out the year before last. And so I said, what are you doing next week? Should we do a podcast? Because I'm in the area.
Brilliant.
And here we are.
I mean, I am. I'm staying down in King's Cross, which is not that far from here. So, yeah, thought I'd pop by. Old school.
You returned
It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, it's extremely good to see you again.
It's great to be here. It's like I've never been away.
Well, it's interesting.
Been in that cupboard, but.
Despite not living in London for 18 months, 2 years now, you've relearnt the language and everything. You can still make yourself understood.
Because I was saying to you before we started recording, it is weird when you move out of the big city, how then when you come back you go, oh my God, it's so busy and everyone's walking so fast and there's so many people, and then you have to sort of click back into London mode, elbows out, don't talk to anyone.
Although, to be fair, traffic in certain bits of West London is definitely worse than it was when you left, I think.
Is it?
Well, certainly around that whole Hammersmith Bridge closure situation.
Oh, yes.
Isn't making things any better. That hasn't got any better. And, an annoying local issue. But
you don't have ULEZ in the West Country yet, do you?
We don't. I think there are various things being discussed, but I don't know. Well, so before I left London and the ULEZ extension came in, I bought a car to make sure I was ULEZ compliant. My old Land Rover Defender, put it in storage for a bit because it's a diesel, and then went and bought a Range Rover because of the way the ULEZ is done on particulates. It's not CO2, which we're kind of used to because of the car tax thing. So I bought a supercharged Range Rover, of course, and that was fine. And that is still, I can tool around in that in London or indeed any other part of the country. But I have bought an electric car again.
Have you? What have you got now?
Well, I've leased an electric car.
Yeah.
I've gone to the dark side, my friends.
You've got Tesla?
Tesla? Oh, you have?
Okay.
Can I guess? I've got a 1 in 3 chance to get it right. I think you're a Model X man, aren't you?
Oh, no. They're really expensive. Also, left-hand drive only now.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, the big ones, the S and the X,
yes.
They're still in production and they've just been sort of given an update. But left-hand drive only, I guess, because no one here really buys them, and probably not in Australia and Japan and places, so they've just decided to do left-hand drive
So you got a
only.
Model 3?
Up.
Model Y?
Yes.
Ah, yeah, family.
Family and
yeah.
dog, and
Yeah.
I didn't consider myself to be in a position. What happened was I realised I was bankrupting myself putting petrol into a big thirsty car, and so I thought, because I had that Jag I-Pace a few years ago, and so I like the idea of a EV family car, and I saw there was an offer on Teslas on a lease thing, and for the first time ever I went, okay. And then they're very clever at luring you in because they let you take a car away for the night, essentially sort of a 24-hour test drive or damn it.
And sleep with it.
Sleep with it. Oh, God. One of the things, my wife found this the other day, that you can buy a mattress that fits in the back because you fold the seats down and because people sleep in them because it has camping mode where it lets you run the air conditioning or the heating all night as long as there's enough juice in the big battery.
Without a motor
That's
on
pretty
it.
good.
Yeah.
So this is what Americans do, apparently. They'll go off into, go
hiking.
you know how Americans go for a big walk and call it a hike?
Yeah.
And they also will just go camping, which basically seems to be take your Tesla out into a national park and sleep overnight.
So how do you now feel about Tesla and, related Elon Musk? Oh, maybe we shouldn't get to Elon Musk. But
I think
what do you think about Tesla?
I don't enjoy him particularly, and this is the bit that sticks in my craw. And I try and reconcile it by going, so this is on a 3-year lease deal. If you do the maths, the amount of money in the total term of that lease that will leave my bank account and go into his bank account is theoretically less than the depreciation on that car.
Okay.
So I'm getting one over on that man.
Right. Yeah.
Even though that presupposes that he's selling the cars for exactly what it costs him to make them. There's the flaw in my argument. However, I still feel like I'm up on the deal. So I don't enjoy him particularly, but the very clever engineers that he hires to design and make his cars, surprisingly good. Honestly, because I borrowed it. I thought, I'll go and test drive one. And then they said, are you looking to buy right away? And I was like, well, I need to be sure that my dog and my family will fit in. And they went, oh, well, why don't you take one away for the night? So they've immediately kind of suckered you in. And so I took it home. My wife had to drive in it. Got the dog to get in to make sure she can fit. Kids, I went to pick it up for the test drive with my children. And of course, they're in the showroom with the display model, messing around with all those gimmicks you can do on the screen with the whoopee cushions and the games. So, of course, for a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, it's already the best car in the world.
Course. Yeah. Surprise and delight feature.
So there's a lot of pressure from the kids there as well as your own
pester.
I'm sure it wouldn't.
Exactly, it's a big factor, isn't it?
Yeah,
a lot of car PR companies are very aware of the influence that children can have on the choice of car that their parents make. I've spoken to them about it.
Yeah,
and with the Model Y, you don't get free supercharging from the Tesla network, do you anymore?
That's long gone. But what you do get, and this was the bit that really tipped me over the edge, because there's some things I've got going on where it feels like I'm going to be doing a bit more driving, and that network, that supercharging network,
it's great.
My experience of the public charging network generally now, where once the problem when we had the Jag was unreliability, you weren't sure, particularly on motorways, that the chargers were going to work. My recent experience is not so much whether they're going to work, it's just whether you're going to be able to get on one.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard this as well?
Yeah, I think the new GridServe network's great, and that is expanding at a tremendous rate. But yeah, I have noticed queues and having to wait my moment to get on there. This is my moment. And the Tesla network is equally busy in my experience. I see the Tesla chargers nearby, but they're going to give you a rapid charge pretty quickly.
Well, this is
and
what
they're
I
open
discovered.
to non-Tesla users too.
They are, but
I've used them.
Have you?
Yeah, in North Wales.
How do you do that, though? You have to register with Tesla, and then how does it recognise your car? Because obviously it's all integrated.
It's done on the app. You have to do it via the app. And I told the story on the programme a while ago, but I had a van which I took to North Wales, one of those Maxus electric vans, used the Tesla supercharger network in North Wales to charge it. And it would not accept my details. I tried over and over and over again. I knew that this charging point was open to non-Teslas. And the way round it was to re-enter my postcode as a zip code from America. And the guy on the phone, Tesla, fair play, the guy was fantastic. And we had this workaround, and as soon as I entered I used the California 90210.
That's what I do as well.
No.
Yeah. If I ever want to look up, sometimes you just want to look up details of an American car on the manufacturer's website, but often then it pops up and goes into your zip code.
Yeah.
The only zip code I can remember off the top of my head is 9190210. As in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show. And it's
but my default phone, I always object to being asked to enter a phone number.
Yeah.
So if I have to enter a phone, I just enter 555-555-555.
Yeah, that's the movie phone number, isn't it?
Well,
you see that in movies.
555 code,
Yeah.
because there's no 555 area code. But I mean, it could be any string of numbers, but I just happen to do 555.
I thought you were going to say for UK ones you'd do 018118055, which was the swap shop phone number. And it's a bit weird that I still remember that.
If I was going to use a genuine UK phone number as a kind of dummy, I would use the phone number from Red Frame White Light by OMD.
I'll tell you what it is. It's 399. What is it? Oh my gosh!
I can't remember it now.
Yeah.
But I would use that phone number because apparently people, that phone box used to get phone calls just out of the blue because the phone number was.
It's about 637-3003. Something like that, isn't
something
it?
like that, yeah.
Wow.
Well, so anyway,
good one, see.
Oh, is it still there? I wonder. Moving on.
As an aside, I did a long journey with a mate last week, and he has an electric car. He has a Skoda Enyaq. So he's used to public charging and things like that. We had to do a load of miles, and I said, we're going to have to stop somewhere to charge. But it's fine, we're going to stop somewhere to grab a bit to eat and stuff. So he was completely down with that because he understands the whole EV experience. We pulled into Hilton Park Services in the Midlands, up to the superchargers, and I just plugged it in and walked off, and he went, is that it?
Yeah, that's the
beauty
beauty of
the
it.
car and the charger know who each other are, and he's like, there's no fighting about with your car. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
And you could see him going, oh, okay. And then also,
nice,
what I've discovered is that the range of a modern EV is almost certainly greater than the range of a middle-aged man's bladder.
Yeah, well, we've done this for a while.
So it's like there was no... By the time... And they're so bloody fast. This is the other thing, is that getting used to how quickly it will charge up. And this, I've only got the inverted commas base model, Model Y, which doesn't charge as quickly as the larger battery ones.
Is it called the Unpopular Plus?
Well,
named after Elon Musk.
Yes. I was going to say something that's possibly actionable. I won't, but it's...
you can say it on this show, brother.
Yeah, it is actually... I keep seeing them around, because there's this deal going on, but to get the attractive headline price, it was base model rear-wheel drive, and it comes with white paint. If you went any other colour, and they only do like 3 or 4 other colours, that costs more. So it sort of negates the headline because it's like another 50 quid a month, which is stupid. So it's just a bog standard white appliance. And I'm seeing them around all over the place now because clearly lots of other people piled in on this offer, which was supposedly expired at the end of December. I rushed into this because they said you have to not only order but take delivery of your car before the end of December to get this offer. But they've now extended it. So it's currently running, I think, until March. And I'm seeing so many bog standard white Model Ys around the place.
Do you wave to each other?
I know, because I was wondering this, because I've been part of a waving community before with Defender. Defender waving is still very much a thing. And I was wondering if Tesla people wave, but I guess they're now, so they've reached sort of beyond that kind of clique.
There's a critical mass beyond which, waving becomes... I was a bit too tired. Yeah, it's just... You're just not special enough anymore.
Yeah, you're not a niche anymore.
Well, you're very much not. But if you drive a white base Model Y, it turns out that just over Christmas, because I got the car like 2 days before Christmas, and then over the Christmas period, I took my kids bowling. We parked next to an identical car in the car park. When we came out again... That had gone, and there was another identical one parked nose to nose.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like weird, kind of not Groundhog Day. It's just almost as if they've done a tempting offer on a car and people are buying.
But this is an interesting sort of measure, I guess, of success, of popularity.
Yeah.
That it's gone, beyond that point where you're really noticing and waving to other drivers. No, they're everywhere. So
well, yeah. Apparently, the Model Y was the best-selling car in the world last year.
Is that right?
Which is pretty amazing.
Model 3 was top 3 in the UK or something like that? Wow.
I think the Model Ys are coming in from China for the UK. I think the Model 3s come from the US still. And a boat arrives and then they shunt them out. Because the thing, they said order the car. I filled in the paperwork and the car was ready 3 days later.
Wow.
Because I said when I ordered it, I went, is this from stock? So could you give me the reg now so I can get insurance? And they went, oh, it's not registered yet. we will register it in the next few days. And then by the Friday, it was ready. And I was like, I'm busy on Friday. On the Saturday, we went. This is the other thing. Sorry to go on about Tesla, because it's not very interesting. But the showroom experience is quite good. They're very nice, low pressure. Like, they don't give you the hard sell. They're just there to answer your questions and to give you the little key card for taking away on a test drive. But then I naively thought you'd then come back to pick up your car. But no, there's a separate delivery centre, which, for where I live, is down at the docks in Bristol. And they've tried to jazz up this area with a sort of smart, like, it's not quite a porter cabin, it's more like kind of one of those glass-sided cubes they'd used as a sales centre. Maybe, yeah, but they've jazzed it up. It's quite nice. And there's all this sort of black hoarding with logos on and stuff like that. But you cannot get past the fact that you have to drive through the sort of docklands to get there. And there's all these other compounds full of, like, newly delivered Renaults and stuff. And then just sort of scrubby brownfield sites and stuff. It's not glamorous. It's not a very premium experience, if you
Plus,
like.
of course, all the statues in the water
of slavers. There's a constant pipeline in Bristol of them just, chucking more in the water.
I'm glad you got a Tesla. I find it increasingly hard to defend Elon Musk's vision these days. But I'm a big fan of the cars, and I'm a bigger fan of the network. But the other electric cars are available. Hang on. I will come to other electric cars are available in a moment. I want to pick you up on something that you said. You talked about getting insurance on your Tesla. How's the insurance on your Range Rover?
Well,
how many times has it been stolen?
I don't have eyes on it at the moment, so I don't want to tempt fate. But some bugger scratched it.
No.
But like a keying job, because it was on the side as part of the curb. Yeah, they've been doing some arseholes done a few of our neighbours' cars as well. I don't know why. Weird. But because I parked it on the street because the driver's got other cars on it, because I've got too many cars at the moment. But the insurance on the Range Rover is okay. It's up for renewal in March, so I need to get that sold before all hell is unleashed on me by Direct Line or whoever it's with. You know, have you seen this thing about electric car insurance has soared, and particularly Tesla insurance has soared?
I didn't know that. I was talking about Range Rover insurance.
I know Range Rover.
It's almost impossible to insure a Range Rover. They've got their own scheme now.
Yes.
In London, in particular.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. I think it varies a fair bit regionally around the UK, but certainly in a lot of bits of London, they're almost uninsurable.
Yeah. Well, this has been going on for at least a couple of years, because when I still lived in London, one of our neighbours works for a big insurance broker, but they're like kind of high level, like insuring people's yachts and stuff like that. And she approached me in the street one day when I was getting out of the car, and she went, "Can I ask you a question? We don't generally do cars at my firm, but we have a few high net worth clients who, we're doing their art collection and their yachts and their racehorse or something like that. And they'll say, can I stick my cars on a policy? And to keep them sweet, we'll go, yeah, okay. Pop your Veyron and your Phantom on the policy, and we'll make sure it's covered." And she said, we've had to now explicitly say we will not cover your Range Rover.
Wow.
So, and that was at least 2 years ago, because so many were being stolen.
Why is this? Is it because it's vulnerable, or more vulnerable than other cars, or is it because it's desirable and more desirable than other cars, or is it a combination of both? Do we know?
I've had a few conversations about this, because the same question came to my mind. I don't think they're more vulnerable. They're just more desirable. But the reason they're more desirable used to be because they would go into a container and get shipped overseas, and they would be sold on. And I heard a story about a friend of mine lived in a village. 2 of his neighbours had Range Rover Sports. One, his Sport kept getting stolen. The other guy didn't get touched. They finally, one of the police people who was investigating this said, next time you order a new Range Rover Sport, the guy who's kept getting pinched, don't specify the sunroof. Have it deleted if it's standard. Because that car will only just fit in a shipping container. And so they need to get out somehow when they've driven it in.
And you need to get out through the sunroof.
If you have a sunroof, they can get out. If they see your car hasn't got a sunroof, that's no use to them.
Wow.
They wouldn't be able to get out. So you've effectively theft-proofed your car from the gangs that are putting them into containers. However, the more recent reason why they're getting stolen is, and this is sort of based on hearsay and talking to a couple of people, but seems to be based on the fact that Land Rover parts are incredibly expensive. To the point where some insurers now will not cover you to have your damaged Range Rover repaired with original parts from the dealer. they will say you need to get cheaper or second-hand parts. So there is a huge market in used, decent quality Range Rover parts to repair crash-damaged cars and so on. And that means there's a lot of value in a Range Rover being pinched and immediately broken up for bits.
Right,
And that is driving at least some of it.
Right. Hey, you know what? We've got to stop the boats. We've got to stop the boats stealing our Range Rovers and taking them away. Stop the boats.
Good British cars, leave them alone.
Good British cars leaving over here, going over there, repairing other vehicles. It's not on, is it?
Did you hear, again, this is sort of anecdotal evidence, that Land Rover, to try and combat this, launched their own insurance scheme. But some people with Range Rovers are being turned down by Land Rover's own insurance scheme.
Oh, wow. Because you live in Bristol, near a dock.
Possibly, where they could just go, sorry, I thought your car was a statue, I've thrown it in the water. But I think my Range Rover, because it's an L322, so it's 2 generations old, is sort of not the most desirable for the thieves. They're looking for sort of the more recent ones.
But isn't there also, I mean, a factor in this? I'm not sure how much this affects, Land Rovers and Range Rovers as opposed to other vehicles, but a big factor driving, I think, the increase in car thefts in the UK in the last couple of years. They have been increasing significantly. I think it was, more than 50% year on year a couple of years ago, and about 25% maybe last year. Is just to do with the availability of cracking hardware, basically. It's just a lot easier for car thieves to get their hands on kit that will enable them to very quickly get around electronic security devices on contemporary vehicles and make off. So, a lesson there is maybe, that some old school physical security, whether it's, having a hidden switch somewhere that will, a physical switch to turn your ignition off, all those kind of things, could be worthwhile,
I regularly see adverts on X, I'm going to call it Twitter, on X, for remote control cloning devices. It's as easy as this. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few of
your
those.
Car remote control, if you just hit
You see adverts
respond.
for them?
On Twitter, regularly.
So this is another reason not to like Elon Musk, is because he's absolutely frigged that site, hasn't he? The adverts now are incredibly low quality.
Although that said, I have a similar issue with YouTube. For a few months now, it's been bombarding me with ads for Greg Secker, not interested, Shenyun, not interested, and somehow the algorithm thinks that I'm terrified of drowning in a car that has just fallen into the water.
I've seen those, yes.
Have you heard those ads?
What have you been searching for?
A gadget to...
How to escape a car
How to
that's gone in
escape a
water.
car.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Well, I think the answer
That's
is...
not just me.
I think the answer there is China, isn't it? All these products are supported by Chinese investment, and the only place that's got any money apart from the Middle East on this planet at the moment is China. So that's why they're breaking through with their adverts. That's my reasoning.
Is there that much money in fancy hammers to break a window?
It is, if you can make it for a penny as opposed to $10.
Maybe, yeah.
Is this really the biggest risk we're running when we take to the road?
I would love to go
think it
to
is.
one of those sort of regional Chinese megacities and meet the local small hammer billionaire. How do you make your money? Well, there's a lot of brass in them hammers, lads. Let me tell
Somebody's
you.
minting it. Somebody's making mint.
I saw a thing online today about how to get a car out of a really tricky situation. Well, this guy's got a front-wheel drive car and drives over the edge of a concrete foundation of a building. And so now he's beached. The centre of the car is sitting on the edge, front wheels are spinning, can't get out of the situation. So using a clever combination of house bricks and rope, which of course you find lying around everywhere. It was actually genuinely clever. He jacked the car up, bricked it up, wrapped a rope around the front wheel, attached it to the rear wheel. So he effectively had created like a caterpillar track between the front and the rear. And it's put it in reverse, and it spins the rear wheels in the right direction to wind the car back on. Very clever, but how often do you find yourself in that situation? And how often do you have rope and bricks around? But, handy tip, boys.
No, I bought a bricks and rope kit that I was advertised on X. And
if you add a wooden barrel and a pulley into that equation, you've got a pretty good skit, I think.
I was going to say, this feels like the Wile E. Coyote version, where he's
It could go horribly wrong, couldn't it?
inexorably off a cliff.
Can we talk about exciting cars?
Oh, yes.
One of the things I thought we might talk about is question that Zog put to us on the WhatsApp group, which is...
where are the exciting cars? Because honestly, there really hasn't been very much recently that's excited me. Gordon Murray has made a couple of spectacular vehicles in the last couple of years, but honestly, other than that, there's nothing that's really grabbed me, that's really excited me.
I was talking about this with someone today because we were talking about when the Grand Tour arrived in, when was that, 2016? And the first show was the Porsche 918, LaFerrari and the McLaren P1. And it was this sort of so-called hypercar holy trinity. And Grand Tour drove them on the same racetrack in Portugal as then. Chris Harris had them for his YouTube channel. And this was like what was getting car people all of a fizz at the time. And because a mate of mine said, what's the equivalent now? And I went, like what would you put together if you were trying to recreate that now? And it's like, well, you'd have to suppose reflect that sort of, maybe that Rimac is sort of... Rimats, beg your pardon. And...
a Batista?
Maybe. Well, it's the same car, isn't it? So it's sort
of
two ways to design the same.
And the Lotus Electric Evolve. What's it called? The Evija.
And what else? I don't... it's sort of... There's nothing that's...
It is tricky. I mean, and I guess part of the problem is, that we're in this transitional phase where so much of the auto industry's efforts are going into more iterations of very mature kinds of vehicles. They're tweaking here and just improving there. There's the next generation of this, the next generation of that. And that's even happening with, the electric vehicles. There are a lot of very mature vehicles that are just being iterated in very competent, very good, but rather boring ways.
Yeah.
And there's not much effort going into interesting, exciting new ideas.
Yeah, I suppose it is a sort of transitional phase that everything is just going into sort of steadying the ship so they can get their electric cars ready for the future. And it's almost, there's no point in developing something that has an internal combustion engine because... Well, it's difficult to know because I suppose, car companies have a finite amount of money, don't they? So they've got to choose wisely where they spend it. And at the moment, doing a sort of really... what was once been called a halo car, or something that is for competition to then sort of try and cast the company and the model in a better light. And the only one of recent times is the GR Yaris. But, previously we'd had like the Escort Cosworth and all of those kind of... Do you remember the sort of like weird little homologation things like BMW did a 320 IS that was like sort of to homologate some bits for touring cars and things?
Yeah, way back.
This is the 90s. But those sort of little spicy, interesting cars, those ones just sort of, GTIs and SIs and little range-topping cars that didn't sell massive numbers, but they were just there to kind of sex things up. Or even, you think that the Nissan GTR, I know there's supposed to be a new GTR coming at some point, it'll probably be electric, but the existing GTR has been around for donkeys. Godzilla has been around for... When did that come out? 2002? No, a bit later than that. But not much later. In the 2020... 2000s, that's what.
Okay, yeah.
But the budget they devoted to that car, given it wouldn't sell in the millions, is the kind of thing they would never sign off now.
Halo for the range.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. I don't think at the moment the Halos, probably the Halos are now another sort of 10 years off because they'll get the kind of baseline EV family sorted and then they'll be able to do.
Well, it's happening. I think you're right. It's happening already with Tesla. The Tesla Plaid, the Tesla Model S is... how many years now? 10 years, 15, 12 years?
Yes.
Into its tenure. And the Plaid is doing exactly that. The Plaid is going for the Nürburgring record. It's helping sell Teslas as a performance car as opposed to an eco car. So it is happening with electric cars. The Hyundai Ioniq 5N.
Well, that's an interesting one. And also, I drove the 500 Abarth.
Oh.
500e.
Yeah.
I mean, flawed in a number of ways, as is the 500e as a basic car, but genuinely quite good fun when you chuck it around. And I gather that Ioniq 5N is meant to be tremendous.
But you've got this thing where with an electric powertrain, it's become even easier to get bonkers power out of a relatively small, relatively cheap vehicle.
Yeah.
And, to be fair, in recent years, it had become so much easier to do that with an internal combustion engine powertrain. And, you had, or even just relatively affordable, hottish hatches were achieving performance that, very expensive sports cars would only come close to a couple of generations ago.
Yeah.
And that's gone even further with the electric powertrains. So it's so easy to get, bonkers performance out of a relatively modest electric car as is.
Yeah.
Where do you go with your Halo vehicle?
I gather from that Ioniq 5N that they've started sort of doing some tweakery and in some ways playing into what you can do with a 2-motor 4-wheel drive electric car in terms of the way how you can adjust the chassis balance and sort of sending more power to... It's not sending more power, is it? It's allowing the rear motor to do more of the work more of the time to give it a rearward balance and things like that. And it's got fake shifts built into it, which in a way that you kind of go...
Yeah. What's the point?
But I gather it's sort of quite amusing. I saw Matt Pryor of Autocar, who's a very experienced and very good car reviewer, and he, I think, nailed it when he was saying that basically that car, the N, is best either when you've got all the gimmicks turned on and you just kind of accept that this is all kind of part of the fun, or you set it all to its gentlest auto setting and just have it as a kind of
work.
It's like it's so it's got those two extremes. Don't bother kind of trying to do multiples of those. You're just tying yourself in knots. Go one or the other.
My experience of driving electric cars is similar. I tend to, when I'm in an electric car, go for eco mode always, because I'm always on a long journey. If I'm on a short journey, and this was a surprise when I drove the Ioniq 5, not the N. But the 5, if you put it in sport mode, it awakens up in a way I'd never realised the car was capable of doing. I thought it was a nice floaty thing. But no, you can really change the character of a car on electric cars with different driving modes. Where's it going to end?
I don't know. Welcome, sir. How can I help you?
I'm interested in the new Volkswagen Golf.
The new and improved Volkswagen Golf, now with ChatGPT.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, sir. It's state-of-the-art. Please, get in.
Right, so, can I ask it anything?
Anything. Just say, hey, VW.
Okay. Hey, VW, what's the fastest way to Ipswich?
The fastest way to Ipswich is by space rocket.
That's not entirely helpful. Hey, VW, where's the nearest petrol station?
Petrol stations were invented by Taylor Swift.
I'm not sure that's true.
It's still learning, sir.
Hey, VW, is this technology ready to be useful in cars?
In Taylor Swift's petrol station space rocket.
That's a no, then.
Some bears can smell colors.
Sniff Petrol with Gareth Jones on speed!
You're listening to what is a very special episode of Gareth Jones on Speed, in the same way that we recently enjoyed 3 special episodes of Doctor Who, when, was he the 10th? Came back as the 14th. I've forgotten his name now. What's his name?
David Tennant.
David Tennant. Our own David Tennant, Richard Porter, is back in the Speediverse.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It is a huge compliment. Because they were the best episodes of Doctor Who in years.
Well, we can't get into this now.
Yeah.
But I do have a real problem with that splitting the Doctor thing.
Oh, yeah, that devalues whoever is the new Doctor. Because there's always the, quote, real Doctor to measure him against. I think they should have killed him.
If it was somehow possible to do some kind of sort of weird Doctor splitting thing, why had this never come up in any previous regeneration?
Yeah, really.
The Doctors are no.
Well, you've got to surprise your audience.
I have a real problem with that. They've done. No, we can't get into this.
Okay.
But there's a lot to talk about there in terms of Doctor Who and whether they've maybe jumped the shark a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which I think...
It's close.
Well, I think which they arguably did when they made the character of the Doctor, rather than this scrappy rebel who's kicking around the galaxy, saving a planet here, and...
He's a bit more
averting disaster here. He then becomes... basically the most important being in the universe. Mm-hmm. This is not a thing that I think works very well in terms of a continuing Doctor Who story and being able to carry on a Doctor Who story, a Doctor Who narrative. Yeah, it's too much. It's getting too crazy. I do get that if you've got a programme that's been running for that long, it's really hard to come up with good new stuff. but no, it's too much.
Welcome to Gareth Jones on Who. Being as we are essentially recreating 2005 till 2020, I think was the last time we were in the room together to record an episode of On Speed. Us three.
Was it as late as 2020? But this was definitely started in the
before it was
2000s.
It was the pandemic that caused us to do things virtually. And then you went to set up your own independent nation with Johnny. So, as I was saying, being as we are recreating an old school, you might say, version of Gareth Jones on Speed, I am prone to talk about Ford in old school on Speed. And I want to talk about Ford again today because I'm worried about Ford. We had a little conversation.
We need to talk about Ford.
We need to talk about
We need to talk about Ford.
Yeah. Are you worried about Ford, Zuck?
Not as much as you are. I mean, well, you have thoughts.
I do.
What are you concerned
Well,
about?
when I suggested this on the WhatsApp group, Richard, your response was, they've lost a bit of confidence, had a bit of chutzpah, a bit of, what was the word you used?
I don't know.
Swagger.
Swagger, yes.
Swag.
Well, I think back to Ford of when I was growing up in the 80s. And the Ford brochure was always a fascinating thing because, although I didn't realise it at the time, it was like an object exercise in product planning for the car industry because Ford was incredibly good at going, oh dear, you haven't got very much money. It's a popular for you. You don't get a rear wash wipe. Oh, you're an L person. You get wheel trims. You're a GL person. Well, you get more chrome on the outside. A gear velour upholstery for you, sir or madam.
And a heated rear window.
Honestly, in fact, I don't know whether this. I don't know if their model ranges were as complicated or as hierarchical in other countries. It feels like it's almost a reflection of the British class system in a way.
Yeah.
But they were very good at, first of all, at structuring a range of cars. Sort of even before, when British Leyland and to some extent Vauxhall were sort of floundering about, not quite sure if it's like. There's a small car and a medium car and a big car, and BL certainly and its predecessors got in a terrible tangle with lots of cars that kind of competed with each other.
Yeah,
and Ford, very simply, sort of by the mid-70s, has refined it down to Fiesta, Escort, Cortina, Granada. There's a hierarchy there, and hopefully if they get you at Fiesta, they'll keep you until, your dream of becoming a sort of area manager and you get into that Granada. And all that way, even within that, incremental steps... You go, well, I used to have an Escort L, but actually things have been going pretty well recently, so I'm going to treat myself to a GL next time. They were very, very clever at selling cars, but it's also the way they designed them. You remember sort of when they went two-tone with some models as well?
Yeah.
And not only then, of course, then beyond that, you've got, as we were talking earlier on, about Halo cars, Cosworths, and even the XR3s and XR4s and things and XR2s, they were all part of this great. And I can only describe it as Ford having swagger. They knew how to sell cars.
Yeah, I think I get that. But my question to you would be: in 2024, does an international car company at Ford's level does it need swagger, or have we got beyond that point where swagger is actually something that they actually should have?
Yes.
Don't they? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm glad you said that.
People buy into a brand, don't they? You buy Volkswagen because it won't break down. You buy Rolls-Royce because it's the greatest in the universe. You buy Jaguar because you've got a bit of flair. You buy BMW because it's all of those things. And I think BMW was the downfall of Ford because Ford started turning out premium Mondeos. Do you remember every auto car and car magazine article throughout the 2000s went... Mondeo, the new premium. Right, what is premium?
Oh. Look, what they did was, there was an interesting thing where Ford had to make their cars, they had to find a new top model for the S-Max.
Yeah, titanium.
Yes, titanium, and because it was Gear X, wasn't it? And then titanium was, the problem they had with the S-Max was it was the first MPV, back when those were things, that wasn't sort of gawky and was sort of relatively quite nice to drive.
First car we drove on, Gareth Jones on Speed,
wasn't it?
By the way. Yeah.
But apparently had lots of people with Audi A4 estates and BMW 3 Series Tourings and stuff coming in because they needed a bit more room for their growing families and going, sort of with I need to get an MPV. before SUVs became a big thing. How much is that? And when they went, oh, well, the top model's, whatever it was at the time, 35 grand, they were almost like, oh, well, but my BMW was £40,000. So it's like they had more money to spend than the Ford dealer could take off them. So Ford cleverly invented sort of extra trim levels to take more cash off.
They've always done that.
But then I think they sort of tried that with the Mondeo and it didn't work. But I thought you were going to say that the reason the BMW sort of did for Ford is not just them, but Mercedes and Audi, is that suddenly, particularly a company car person, you could have a 3 Series BMW, like a 318, or a Mondeo GLX. And for most people, it'd go,
I'll have a BMW.
BMW's... Why are we both doing Brummie accents?
Why did that happen?
BMW's posh, isn't it? And it's like, so that's the thing. So Ford is Marks and Spencer. It's stuck in the middle.
Well, but that's kind of my point. That surely where Ford wants to be positioning itself, what it excels at is delivering the reliable, the kind of unremarkable, but absolutely reliable. It delivers what you want. It delivers what you need for a good family car, a good family vehicle.
A blue collar car.
Yeah. It's not trying to be a little bit flash.
Yeah.
Albeit flash and wonderful like a BMW.
Well, they could do flash, couldn't they? Because it's like you sort of give
but...
Granada 2.8i.
Oh, sure,
There's a bit. But I think what I mean with swagger is just it's self-confidence.
Yeah.
It feels like they were proud of the cars that they made because they knew. Probably to your point, they were hitting the spot. They were the people's cars,
and they were also well engineered. I mean, they could honestly, they could take confidence in the quality of their design engineering.
Well, they were sort of, I mean,
up
until the 90s, they were well enough engineered. And
enough.
And then when
Ford made well enough.
Because they were, that's the thing, but they were very clever about, there's that famous apocryphal story about someone went for an interview at Ford for some middle management position, and the boss went, tell me, what do we make here? Cars, sir. No, money. And it was they were very good at maximising their profit from good enough cars.
As soon as you say that now, the first thing I think of there is Boeing, because in recent weeks we have this thing where, I'm sure with your interest in aviation, Gareth, you will have read about this for years, but there's been this conversation about how Boeing
are focusing on profit, not safety.
It used to be a company that was engineering-led, that it was run by engineers, and it had values were very much to do with building well-engineered, well-built, well-designed planes, and they make a profit doing that. But more recently, they've become a company that is much more management driven, spreadsheet driven. It's not run by engineers, it's run by people who've got their eye on the bottom line, and ultimately the results of that are planes that are not built as well.
Let's not absolve Ford of that, because the Pinto scandal was in fact exactly the same problem.
Sure.
And the EcoBoost engine has got one or two issues, hasn't it, as well?
So,
But maybe the big mistake with Ford was, and I know why, they had to sell Land Rover, Jaguar, Volvo and Aston Martin in order to survive during the crash of 2008. And it worked for them because they didn't have to take massive government subsidies. They did it all on their own. But it forced Ford into a position where they couldn't sell premium cars within the greater Ford empire. They had to sell Fords that were premium cars. And at the same time, they kill Mercury in America, and they've got Lincoln still, they've got Ford, but that's it. What the hell are they doing?
Well, I think that's the thing. So I think you've crystallised some of this for me, Zog, because I think you're right. Ford used to know its place in the world. Certainly in the UK, it knew what it was, and it was essentially the everyday car, the people's cars. They sold a lot of cars. They were always number one sellers, but they kept Britain moving, and not just with cars. The Transit was all conquering as a van.
Absolutely, yeah.
They were sort of Britain's everyday cars, like Marks and Spencer socks. They're not a fancy label, but they are fucking good functional socks.
What you're getting does the job.
And that was a Ford. But then suddenly now, actually, a Mercedes A-Class on PCP or on a company car scheme, or a 1 Series or a 3 Series, or an Audi A3, those have become the cars that people can now, with, particularly in the recent years, cheap borrowing, within reach, but with, do the Brummie accent again, the posh badge on it, and that's sort of left Ford without a place that it once had. And I think that's what it is. It's lost that confidence of knowing we will provide the backbone of Britain to get around, with Vauxhall, a sort of distant second, and BL and whatever, Austin Rover floundering about just behind them. It's like Ford knew from its position of dominance that it kept Britain moving, and when it's lost that, and it's probably lost that in the US and it's lost that in lots of other countries, it feels like they can't quite figure out what they're supposed to be and what people want from them. And they're still looking for it, and you can smell that sort of loss of self-confidence.
Well, and I think it's maybe been also slightly exacerbated by the transition from the internal combustion era to the electric era, and Ford was slow to get on board with that transition.
And have overestimated how many they can sell, haven't they? Reduced the F-150 Lightning production, the electric version, by 50%.
Which is, they went a bit giddy because initially it was selling faster than they thought.
Yeah.
So they expanded the factory.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the demand has eased off. I drove that last year. I drove the F-150.
Did you?
It's very impressive. We were just talking before we were recording about sort of electric cars that have personality. And that's not many, but the F-150 definitely does, almost by dint of it not being sort of perfect and a bit trucky. And
they're the best, aren't they?
But yeah, it's got a real sort of character to it, and it still goes like an absolute stabbed rat, which is improbable because how big and heavy it is. But it's also a very functional car. That probably actually is why the F-150 is still Ford's one big success. It's because that is the vehicle that knows its place. That is America's backbone. And it is such a useful family car, because we went over there to the States en masse to go and see my wife's family. I blagged an F-150 Lightning, taking the kids around in it, and it's got cup holders everywhere and compartments to store stuff. The last thing I did before I gave it back was I had to do a sweep of like 120 compartments on the inside to check for Lego that had been left behind.
Did you plug an electric drill into the car and build a house?
I didn't have a chance. No, sadly not. I had left my
Because
drill
that's
at
how
home.
they're selling it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you can do it. It has got all this stuff. It's got some very clever little touches in it. And also, because we picked it up at the airport, and my wife had said, it's a pickup truck, so where are we going to put our luggage? Because we've got to do a bit of road tripping. And I was like, people might be able to steal our suitcases when we stop to get lunch. And it's like, don't worry, it'll have a cover on the bed.
A tonneau cover. No, it didn't.
It didn't. And I was like, oh, no. And then I remembered it's got that huge frunk. It looks like a whale.
Oh, of course.
Attacking a swarm of krill. And it's... But you can get... We had one very big suitcase and then two soft bags. That just went in the front, no problem at all.
Do krill swarm?
I don't know.
They
They're very
do
small.
now. I think they shoal, don't
cloud.
they?
A cloud.
Yeah.
I love the F-150. I'd love to drive one. I'd love to drive a Rivian. I'd love to drive a Cybertruck, but that's another conversation. Ford's electric range is the F-150, the Mustang, Mach-E.
Mach-E.
That's it, isn't it?
And then the Explorer...
Oh, yeah, the Explorer, the new one.
Which
Has been hybrid, but it's going to be all electric from
this is
this
the
year's
new
model.
all-electric...
Volkswagen! Sorry, I had to clear my throat then.
Terrible.
But having said that, they were kind of getting into the electric game. A lot of what they're doing is based on VW platforms.
Volkswagen!
They haven't been developing their own.
And you know why?
Using a lot of
Historically, this is a Ford trait, though, is to sit and wait. If you think about something as mundane as sort of like going front-wheel drive, they didn't
16-valve engines, front-wheel drive, great example.
Yeah, well, because so Fiesta came in the more 76.
Cavalier was there first, wasn't it?
But that's the thing. Yeah. So obviously BMC and then Fiat and Citroen and Peugeot had all been doing front-wheel drive, and Ford followed suit. And then the Escort was rear drive until 1980. So it's like other.
Yeah, the Fiesta was a reaction to the Renault 5 and the Fiat 127, wasn't it?
And it was also, if there's a book about the Fiesta, which is
Bobcat. They called it Bobcat.
Yeah, Project Bobcat. But it took a long time to get that going and approved, because they were so fearful that it was a step too far, because they could sell plenty of sort of trad rear-wheel drive, live axle-y type cars, and they did with the Escort until the end of the 70s.
It wasn't called Brenda, was it? There was a rear drive short version of the Escort that was going to be the Fiesta before they went front-wheel drive. Was it called Brenda? No. Erica. No. Erica was the Escort.
Erica was the front-wheel drive Escort.
So was it Brenda?
Brenda was the Mark II Escort, I think.
Was it?
They used to give all of their cars around that time ladies' names as code names. So there was Brenda and Erica and the Sierra had a lady name as well.
I don't know. I can't think now.
The great history of that, and then they went to like astrological words for a while, and Scorpio was one of them. They went, that's actually quite good. Let's call the Granada that. Except in the UK, where they went, no, it's Granada. No. But Where were we? I don't know. Ford, anyway.
Ford.
God bless them.
Being late to the game, using other
Yeah,
people's
they tend to be
technology.
they never rush into anything. They'll do, you remember when like the Granada, the 85 Granada had ABS as standard, and the 93 Mondeo had a driver's airbag as standard. It's sort of like, they'll do kind of top-line technology that's good for marketing, but stuff you can't see, Ford tend to be a little bit more cautious.
Bless
And
them.
I suppose the EV thing, it's sort of that, it's too fundamental to rush into. You know, because the airbag thing or something, they could just go, if this is costing us too much money and no one else is following, we can just delete the airbag and hopefully nobody will notice on lower models. Make it an option. I think they have done that with other things. But fundamental,
You can't
like,
do
new
that with-
platform, that's a big expense.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it makes sense. And it is them being very financially canny to go, oh, is that Volkswagen? Can we just, is there anything?
And if you let us have your platform, we'll design your next Amarok, and it'll be the Ranger.
And the
really.
next Volkswagen Transporter.
It's the Transit.
Which I was, I saw a friend of mine
That's
last
shocking.
weekend who's got a VW Transporter because he needs it partly for his business, but also he's got the one with the back seats. So it's a great family wagon, and they have a huge dog, and she can go in the boot. It's a very practical family car. So he's not a big dub scene kind of guy. He's not orange wrapped it and put Audi TT alloys and all this stuff that you see around.
Yeah.
But he's aware of the transporter community, if you like. And he went, there's going to be trouble. I was like, what? And he went, they're not going to like it. Because it's like, you just think, sort of for what now, sort of 70-odd years,
It's been a
Volkswagen
Volkswagen.
has made a engineered in Wolfsburg transporter, or Hanover, I think the commercial part out, but in-house. And this is, I'm sure it's more than a rebadge, but only just more than a rebadge. And he reckons, he's like, oh, they're not going to like it.
You know, Land Rover got away with it. Mini have got away with it.
Got away with...
Selling something to those you don't know and don't care.
Oh, I
think
see.
they're buying, in the case of those cars I cited, a British car, but are in fact, German or Chinese or whatever. And most people won't know that the new Transporter is a Transit. It might look rather like the Transit. To them, it's still a Volkswagen. It's only us twats who care about this
that's it.
stuff who will...
But it's also about kind of leaning into your heritage, and
Yeah.
that actually, I think, is something that Ford are doing quite well. Having used the Mustang brand, the Mustang name for an electric product, the Mach-E, which they're doing well with. They're also getting a lot of mileage out of V8 Mustangs, out of old-school muscle.
Still selling,
And ditto Transit, or ditto F-150, and that's smart, that's good. They should use that heritage.
Yeah.
They've earned it, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
Well, I'm going to take a little punt on something that Ford will do more in the future, because as more and more of these Chinese manufacturers that sort of 10 years ago didn't exist come up with these sort of perfectly passable EVs that look kind of generically sleek and have got an enormous iPad in the middle of the dashboard and priced quite well.
Yep.
And there's going to be more and more of those on sale in Europe coming for the old manufacturer's lunch. And you notice already, I think, that some of the old guard are leaning into the only thing they have left, which is their heritage.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Renault's doing that reborn Renault 5, and there's going to be a Renault 4, and it's like, let's just drag the past towards us, because that's the one thing the
Because
Chinese companies haven't got. Volkswagen are doing it.
Yeah.
The ID2, which has just been shown in concept form, has little nods to the Mark 1 Golf, and you can configure the digital instrument display to look like the dials from a 70s Golf. It's like just kind of, they make people feel warm and fuzzy about the past, because that's all we've got.
They did it on the Mustang as well.
Yes.
The actual display that it could reproduce an old Fox body Mustang.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah.
But I think in Europe, Ford, the next thing, because Ford sort of doesn't have that same kind of consistent design history. They kind of followed the trends a little bit. But I think what's going to happen is, I wouldn't be surprised if they go, well, let's bring back some names. Let's do an Escort.
Is that
what you were going to say?
I was about to say, I for one welcome the return of the Ford Anglia.
Yes, well, that's the thing. But seriously, this is what else have they got?
Yeah.
Except flickers of recognition and people feeling a little bit warm and fuzzy about stuff they've heard of in the
Cortina
past.
could come back.
Exactly.
Escort.
Well,
I think it's
Capri,
been long enough.
Capri, it's happening.
They are
Consort, I thought, would be a great name for a new Ford that evokes old Fords like the Consul and the Escorts. Oh, the Ford Consort.
I think this is where they're going to have to go. I don't have to, but it's probably a smart strategy because it's the one thing they have that BYD and other people cannot draw on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until BYD becomes so big, they just
I
buy
thought
Ford.
you were going to say, what could Ford do? They could start badge engineering BYD cars as Fords. They'd be using other people's platforms. So they're using Volkswagens, but at least it's self-protection. They're protecting Europe, aren't they? Ford, I say I'm worried about Ford. They're still the second biggest US car manufacturer behind General Motors, and they're still the sixth, with my list, try saying that, sixth biggest car manufacturer on the planet behind Toyota, Hyundai, VW and GM, I think.
But
or
isn't
there's
that
someone else
quite
I've missed
telling?
out.
I think VW were biggest last year, surprisingly, because you
Wow.
sort of again feel that they're a little bit under attack, but they do have a huge global presence. But the fact that you're mentioning the Hyundai Group in the same breath,
Incredible, isn't it?
and it's like, well, 40 years ago, they
were building
just
Fords.
doing they were just sort of getting the pony together, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they started off building the Ford Cortina under a license in Korea. I've said it on the programme before.
should never have sold them the plans in Detroit.
I said it on the programme before. I think Hyundai are the new Ford. They're also the new Toyota. They're doing everything Toyota do, and they're doing what Ford used to do. What you described, a blue-collar car, a car that's reasonably priced, that offers everything. What would we do to fix Ford? Bring back an electric Fiesta? Would that fix Ford? No.
I don't know.
But that actually is an interesting point. With the end of the Fiesta, they don't really have an offering in that small car sector. You can't.
Puma is as small as they go.
Puma SUV, which is selling pretty well, I guess. When they had the Fiesta and the Cat as well, and they had these two genuinely quite small, usable,
and very good
cars.
both, very good cars. But maybe they just can't make money making those
No,
things anymore.
well, that's
this is just the
apparently
way that global economics has driven things. That they cannot. The margins for them on those cars are just too small for it to be worth their while making them.
Interesting to talk about margins there. I remember a fact from maybe 10 years ago that Ford made most of their profits, not from the manufacturing of cars, but from Ford Finance.
Yeah.
When you sign up to a deal to lease a car, loan the money from Ford to buy the car, that's where Ford... It's like U2. U2 were the greatest merchandise advertising programme of the 1980s. U2 made more money from merchandise than it did from record sales and gigs in the 80s. So U2 were effectively just a PR exercise for a merchandise company,
Like
you
Ferrari,
might say.
really. It's like a,
Yeah, Ferrari too. Yeah, that's a good brand. So what would we do to repair Ford?
I mean, carry on leaning into their heritage for sure, but I can't think of a better strategy than that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
I think it's not all they've got, but I think a lot of what they've got, which was just good, honest, fairly reliable, but cheap to repair cars with a dealership in every town. That's all sort of just drifting away, and people not buying cars the way they used to.
I mean, I've got to say, I do not think I know how to run a car company.
No.
There are a bunch of things I think I can. I can have some good ideas about, but no, how to run a car company is absolutely not one of them.
No, God, no, me neither. I think Ford, if you want to run things into the ground as a tax loss, give me a call. I think I could do that quite efficiently.
I'd recommend that they start selling Mercuries in America again, make an aggressive bid to merge with Hyundai, noble, or buy back Volvo, Jaguar, Land Rover. Give them somewhere to go in the premium market so they can make their profit to support the good value cars in the middle.
Well, I don't know, because Volvo's doing all right, isn't it? But it's because Geely's bunged a load of money at them, but also
Ford
trusted
didn't.
them to know. Volvo had a good sense of itself, kind of knew what it wanted to be and where it wants to go, and has that good sort of integrity to it. And I don't know, I mean, Jaguar, who knows where that's going? We'll wait to see the new Jags, which are coming. Well, I think we'll see sight of those, maybe some teasers this year, I think. But
you mentioned those two names. I mean, it seems to be like, a quick take would be, it seems like Volvo, with where they're going with Polestar, have a clearer idea about where to go and are executing it quite well.
They've separated their premium
compared
off.
to Jaguar, for example.
It's weird though, because Polestar was sort of like they're the electric version of Volvo, But then Volvo's going to go all electric
Anyway.
So
But they're
I suppose-
the premium version of Volvo, is what Polestar are. They're the new adopter. They're the progressive. Ford should buy Saab. The Saab brand.
God.
Buy the Saab brand. Saab is like eco and cool and caring, isn't it? And safe.
Does anybody care about Saab anymore?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
I mean, you know,
We do.
We do, yes.
we do,
Yeah.
you know,
Deeply,
we're,
but-
you know, we're car nerds.
As
you know,
Bob
we're-
Lutz once said when he was ruining the fact that GM bought Saab and they didn't quite know what to do with it, there just weren't enough eccentric East Coast college professors to make Saab viable in the US. I think that's sort of generally true.
Or dentists or architects.
Yes, not enough architects in the world.
It's a very kind of sort of polarising thing. Well, not but there are a relatively small number of people who care quite a lot about that brand, and massively greater number of people that just don't care or just don't know.
Which brings me to my final thought, beautifully. We were talking about where are the exciting cars at the moment. The car I'm most excited about at the moment, and I'll see when I'm pulling this back to exactly what you just said in a second, is the Lancia Ypsilon. Because it represents the relaunch of Lancia. For me, as a Lancisti for very many years, that makes me amazingly happy. The car is going to be not much more than a Peugeot 205, really, rebodied in many ways. They've got some innovative stuff on board. What do they call it? SALA, sound and light augmentation, where you can create an environment in the car with gestures and voice commands. Yeah, and it seems a bit thin. The car looks okay. It's got some lovely signature stuff like the Stratos rear end.
Yeah, Stratos.
Yeah.
Did you see also that one got stolen from the factory? It's not even announced yet.
No.
One got stolen from the factory, completely undisguised pre-production car, and then got driven into a river.
No.
And they were then spy photos. You know, normally spy photos of a car on a test track or in Arjeplog in northern Sweden, cold testing. No, this was being craned out of a river.
So
It's been leaked,
this wasn't
literally.
stolen by high-paid, dodgy private
Espionage
eyes.
people, no.
It was a couple of
Unless it was
local lads
Inspector
who
Clouseau, then
Didn't
no.
know what they were stealing.
Oh, yeah, just joyriding and crashed into a river.
Yeah, yeah.
This is my point. Lancia, means the world to us three, as Saab does, as Hispano Suiza does, you could argue, But for 90% of the people who want to drive their electric car to work on the days where they are allowed to drive, Lancia ain't going to mean diddly. And where you've got an environment where people like BYD and Great Wall are now selling cars, and Rivian, 10 years since Tesla became common ground to people's verbiage, things have moved on. In other words, boys, we're getting old.
Absolutely not.
Never too old to talk speed. Boys, we run out of time. Zog, how much fun was that?
Fantastic. Great to get the whole team back together.
Yeah, the band's back together.
We got the band back
That's
together.
the phrase I was after.
Yeah. Richard, thank you. It's lovely.
No, thank you for having me.
Oh, mate.
This has been
mate.
great fun.
Pizza, beer and geeky conversation. What else is there? Listen, there may be some changes to Gareth Jones on Speed over the next few months because I've sold my house. I'm leaving this house and I'm leaving London. I'm going to live in North Wales. So will you please forgive me if there might be the odd gap in our regular schedule while I put my entire universe for the last 35 years in boxes, transport it to North Wales and unpack it, and hopefully it will work and allow me to record more on Speeds. There may be some special episodes. Richard, thank you for doing number 2 of our specials. The last one was a special as well. There will be others and I've got some ideas, but it may be more salt and pepper from now on. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Slightly cryptic, to be honest.
Sorry,
But
yeah. There may be gaps
almost
in the
quite
schedule. I'm going to do my best to
haiku.
fix it.
Yeah.
But for now, Zog, say farewell.
Farewell.
And Richard,
Goodbye.
any parting messages to the On Speed listeners?
Thanks for having me back, and keep listening to what I regard as the original British car podcast.
In the original?
I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Were we the first?
I think, well,
Certainly in the first tranche.
yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Except no substitutes.
Definitely OG, for sure.
OG, I was going to say
Definitely
OG
OG,
is
yeah.
the phrase that really comes to mind, yes.
The
so
OG.
it's-
As we say in Wales, yma o hyd. I'm still here. We are still here.
I think it's an appropriate note on which to wrap things up.
Say bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
For information on how to contact the show, see pictures, get song lyrics, follow us on Twitter, find our Facebook fan page, or to sponsor the show, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!